Hello and welcome to the Green Profit Academy Pros podcast. This show digs into the challenges in growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit. I'm Christeen
And I'm Steve Bousquet. We are the green industry experts in profit, growth, and leadership.
Good afternoon, Christeen. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's a little chilly, but other than that, I'm doing really good. How are you doing?
I'm great. First day of spring, first day of production. We have crews out. Things are rolling.
It is. Jameson reminded me this morning it was the first day of spring. He's all over it, knowing when the seasons change. So.
Yes, this is our 42nd year in business, 42nd spring. It's pretty exciting.
How's it rolling out so far on the first day?
Good. Everybody was on time. Everybody showed up. Everybody got out. They had their routes. We've been doing training and prep for the past about week and a half. So everybody was ready to go. We had about half the crew show up last week to get ready, the senior guys. And we had everybody else show up on Monday, and they spent Monday and Tuesday prepping and training. And yesterday we finished up around the shop, and some crews went out yesterday to do some more soil test sampling, and then today's production. So it went well.
So you've been busy. You've been getting everybody kind of ready to launch into the season, making sure everybody's going through all of their kind of practicing and prep phases. And on top of it, I know you have also been interviewing for some positions in your company.
We have been. So we're hiring a couple of lawn techs we need. So we had all our full-time lawn techs come back. We had one part-time lawn tech that we did not invite back this year just because we need that position to be full-time this year. But we're hiring a phone person also to follow up sales calls. Mm-hmm. Just because our sales people are just so busy running leads all the time, and our inbound and outbound team are booked. So we're hiring someone to follow up on sales leads, and then as the season goes on, do wellness calls, follow up on lime quotes and seeding quotes. So that's what we've been interviewing. And also for the lawn tech. Tomorrow we have our first working interview for a lawn tech position.
Very nice. Yeah, I've been working with a client to get a project coordinator hired in their company because we identified there was a gap with the production team and the sales team, like the production managers and the sales teams being able to coordinate everything and, get everything scheduled without hiccups or issues. So it's been a role that we've been diving into for a landscaping business and hiring for that role, which has been going very well, which kind of inspired our conversation for today.
Yes. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about one of the most critical aspects of running a landscape business. And if you do it really well, it can lead to incredible success. And if we struggle with it, it can just really be an anchor in the company's success. And that's hiring, and not just hiring, but really hiring the right people and how to do it in a systematic way, and that leads us on the right path, right? How do we not only hire people, what's the system for it, but we're also going to talk about letting people go. Because even if we try to do our very best, which we all do, we're just going to hire the wrong people sometimes. And sometimes we don't know that until we go down a few months or maybe, half a year. And then how do we go about firing them, and how do we offboard them? So we're going to talk about that. And it's going to be an interesting conversation. You and I both have a lot of experience with this.
We do. And the last episode that just dropped, we kind of touched on this. I felt like it's one of those areas that could always be touched on more. But I thought it would just be such a great topic to talk about and dive into. And it's one of those ones where we've been through, I felt like, the hiring gauntlet of like, how do we get this dialed in? How do we hire the right people? There was even a conversation I had the other day. I was on a call with other accountants and business coaches, and they were like, what is it? Like, how do we get there, with hiring the right people and not micromanaging them, and how do we create that environment? And so it's just a very interesting conversation, and it comes up a lot, and it seems like it's one of the hardest things that impact the rest of the company, to where it's like, oh, I don't have the right guys, oh, we're not productive, oh, we're bleeding profit, there's this one guy that does this, or he was good for a year and then this happened. So it seems like it's coming up in every aspect of the business. So I thought we could talk about, how do we really get it dialed in, some tips and tricks, what to do, not to do, all of that good stuff.
Well, first off, I want to say that it's not just lawn care and landscape businesses. It's accounting, because I'm in the profit first world, and I meet with accountants and bookkeepers and CFOs and bankers, and it's all industries. Restaurants are very difficult to hire for, the medical field. So, it's not just us landscapers that have a hard time hiring, it's everybody. So we just have to get over ourselves and realize that this is not just a us problem. This is a worldwide problem. So one of the things that I kind of realized, that you have to take hiring serious. It can't be oh my gosh, it's spring, now it's time to hire. This has to be something that I needed to think about all the time. Who do I really want to hire, and be honest with myself, right? And knowing how much I can pay, knowing and identifying who fits into my company and who doesn't fit into my company, and really being upfront about that, and knowing like what kind of culture my company has, and what kind of company whoever's listening to this podcast, what is the culture at your company, and who's going to fit into that company culture? Because I found that is the key to people staying at a company, is if they don't fit into the company culture, they won't last.
Right. And they'll also can create a lot of damage while they are there. And that's another thing, that if you're really trying to kind of shift that company culture and hire differently, or different people, then take the time to hire the people that you want to create the culture that you want. So maybe you don't have it right now, but when you go to hire, don't look at it like, oh, is this person going to fit now? Right? Is this person going to contribute to the culture I want to build, or I want to create?
That's a great point, because if you're unhappy with your team now, don't keep hiring the people. Don't hire down to fit in. You want to hire up to build the team that you want, right?
Yeah.
And I was just thinking from my perspective of, who we have now. But back in the day, I had crazy amounts of turnover. We would turn over 20 to 30 people in a year. And this is before I knew my numbers. This is before we had plans. This is before we had strategies. We had a lot of turnover. And I would always hire at that same level instead of hiring up. So I just kept getting more of what I had. So that is a good point. If you're trying to build something up, don't hire at the same level you're unhappy with.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we've adopted, is the hire slow, right? It's making sure that the process of hiring someone, you take your time, you're intentional, you identify, like, there's certain things, and we can go over these of, what do you need to look for, and, some of the process. And one of them, Steve, that you already said, is like, what do we need? What can I afford? And this is going to include things like skills, right? Like, what type of skills do I need for this job? What type of person would be good for this job? What are my values in the company? What values do I want this person to have? And those things could be, they take pride in their work, or they have attention to detail, or, they communicate well and respect others, or they're team players. So there could be things that you're really looking for in a person that you're going to interview.
And so we do a phone interview, and we're really looking for do they show up on time for any of the interviews, right? Being on time is the first thing. Are they polite? Are they answering honestly? Do they have good questions back for us? If they have no questions, that's usually a sign. And then we're looking at their resumes. So we do advertise on Indeed and online, but we still have not really hired anybody off those sites for production. For field, we have, for in the office, but for field, no. We're still getting people from referrals from other people. But looking at that resume, we're looking at, are they job hoppers? People, you would be surprised at how many people don't make it 1 year at a job. But it's not just one job. It's like they've had 9 jobs in 6 years. So what's the story behind that? That's not usually, for my company, that's not good, because my average length of employment is, 4 to 6 years. We've had people who have been here for 20 years. So we're not a company that turns over people that quickly. So, but if you're a company that maybe you hire temporary, or maybe you have people that you only need for 1 year, that might work in your company. So, hire to what works in your company, but just make sure that you're looking at the resumes. Almost everybody has decent resumes. So the computer has really helped that, whether it's AI or they're just figuring out how to do resumes, people do have decent resumes, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I would say it's probably mostly AI. Like,
yeah, they do a good job. So we do a phone interview, and then if they pass the phone interview, we bring them in for an in-person interview. And again, the whole real deal with the in-person is, are they on time? Mm-hmm. And did they come dressed for an interview? I've had people show up in shorts, flip-flops, and holey shirts, not ready for an interview. And that tells me a lot about a person. Like, how serious are they taking this job interview? Do they come, prepared for the interview? Are they neatly dressed? That's usually a good sign. Do they show up early? That's a good sign. Do they have some questions? And then if that all works out, and you get a vibe. So we'll introduce them to other people around the office. So I'm not the only person involved with them. At least we'll give them a little bit of a tour and introduce them to 1 or 2 people. And then if that works out, and I ask them simple questions. I'm not asking them really difficult questions. We're just asking, hey, where have you worked? What did you like about where you worked? What didn't you like about it? What would you be interested in learning if you worked here? Tell us about a mistake that you made at work, and how did you correct it? How did you deal with it? Right? Have you ever dealt with an angry customer, an upset customer? How did you deal with that? And if they never made a mistake, that's not a good sign, right? Because I've already made 10 mistakes or 20 today, right? I've already, not huge mistakes, but like, if you've never made a mistake at work and you're just not even trying at all, like, you better be making mistakes at some point at work, and then you better know how to fix mistakes, right? That's all you're doing all day anyways, is just making a mistake and correcting it. That's like when you fly a plane, you're just correcting all day, all flight. So we want people who can make a mistake, admit it, correct it, make a mistake, correct it. And if they deal with angry customers, we want to hear, what was that like? Because they're going to be dealing with customers. So we're looking really for honesty, vulnerability, trustworthiness. They were on time, more than, do they know how to run a Z-spray or a mower or the string trimmer? Because we can teach those skills, but I can't teach integrity, morality.
Yeah, and we have part of our interview process, as we call it, the technical and culture interview. And we come up with questions that, not every interview process is the same. Like, if we're going to hire, an accountant, that's going to be different than an admin. Or if you're going to hire an, operations manager, that's going to be different than a field laborer, right? So the structure is basically the same, but the questions kind of change to really fit that role. And which is nice, because you can kind of customize the questions a little bit and look at it from, well, an ideal, field laborer is going to do this, or they're going to show up this way, or they're going to have these types of skills or talents. And so we'll base our questions around there. So the culture questions are fairly similar, because our culture doesn't change. right? But then there's going to be things where people who work in the field, they're not going to have a problem, like getting dirty or, doing the hard work versus the office people. There's going to be a little bit of a different focus there. And then the technical side, of course, that's where it really changes is do they have the skills and talents we're looking for? And we have even introduced I call them trick questions where there's no real right answer, but the answer does tell me, what psychologically, like how these people behave, like subconsciously, like who are they at their core, right? So there's some questions that you can kind of put in there to where they might be telling you one thing, but when they answer this question, you're going to know that maybe that one thing is BS, or that they're consistent. So there's some questions that you can kind of put in there as well that lets you know, like, hey, is this person being upfront with me? Because
Right.
in that interview process, they're showing up as their best self. This is, it's kind of like that first date, right? This is as good as it's going to get. And until you really build that relationship and onboard someone and have a longer term relationship, they're showing up as their best self in that phase of their life at that moment.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think we have any good. Well, I don't think we do questions like that. But after the in-person interview, if they pass that, then we do the working interview. And for the bookkeeper, we have one where they do a test and then we give them tasks and the phone. So the new position for the phone person will set up where they'll just do mock phone calls. So we'll have them call somebody in the office, but pretending that they're making a sales call, role play.
Yeah. Yep. We do that too.
Yeah. So, and that works. You just see how they handle themselves on the phone. How's the tone, the voice? But for the lawn techs, they'll go out with a lawn tech for the day, and we're really seeing, are they paying attention? Are they listening? Are they on their phone all day being distracted? Are they being safe? That's a big part. We'll give them some simple instructions during the day. Can they follow those simple instructions? We'll have them fill out some paperwork, very, very basic paperwork. Can they fill the paperwork out? And we're just seeing, what can they do? What can't they do? We won't really have them use the equipment too much at anyone's home, but we'll have them use it at the shop. And we're just trying to see where their skill level, curiosity level is. Some people come back at the end of the day and they say, no way, the truck's too big. That's too many properties. The pace is too fast. No, thank you. So, and we get, 30% of the people actually never show up for their working interview. So that's good to know right up front that, hey, even after the phone interview, the in-person interview, 30% don't show up. I'd rather have them not show up for the working interview than not show up for the first day of the job.
Yeah. And I know too, I love the working interviews and the ride-alongs because the person that initially is interviewing them isn't involved in that. It's other team members or field workers. And something else shows up with that potential employee in the field, right? To where they feel more comfortable. The boss isn't around watching them. So it's going to give you that insight of how are they going to act or interact with the team when I'm not there. And the employee that they're with will typically, like 99% of the time, come back and tell you, hey, this was a little suspicious, or I didn't like that this person did this, or man, as soon as we left the lot, this person just every other word, that came out of their mouth was just, potty mouth. So there could be just a different behavior that shows up. And that's another great thing with the working interview.
Yes. So I've gotten calls from my techs saying, Steve, you cannot hire this guy. He just tells me he's out every night, three or four times a week, getting bar fights, doing this and that. He does not represent our company values, or he's on the phone half the day, or, it's just not going to be a good fit because hiring people who have or drama in their lives, a lot of personal drama, they never seem to fit in the company. Not as an event, like they had a bad thing happen or a thing happen, but like they can go on for 2 hours telling you about the last 15 years, about all these unusual, weird events and drama things in their lives. They never fit in the company. So it is interesting. So at the end of the day, the person that's doing the work interview, they get a form to fill out. And then the tech that did the ride along, they get a form to fill out. So each one kind of grades each other on, the person doing the work interview. Were you given clear instructions? Was the supervisor, helpful, teaching and training? Was it clear? Were the expectations clear for the day? And then the tech, did he pay attention? Was he safe? Did he listen? Did he follow instructions? Was he able to complete the paperwork? That way we have something like measurable and documented for that day. We do pay the person for the day. So I don't know the taxes laws in every state, but in Connecticut, if it's under $600, you pay him as something. It's not, so we don't have to put him on the books, but he's covered by workers' comp. And so you might want to check with your whatever state you're in for that. But we do pay them for that working day and the hours they put in. We don't cut them a check that day. We cut it when we do the payroll. But we do pay them for the day. So it works. Like I said, you weed out a third of the people because they never show up.
Yeah. And I love that you have the checklist. Like that's something that we have. And I think we shared our whole process with you and your team, Steve, when we originally developed it and said, hey, like test drive this. And it's pulled from many different hiring processes. It's not just one thing. It was, kind of picked into little pieces to really serve small businesses. But what that is called is the 360 review, right? So we're having the person that you're interviewing share feedback, and then you're having the person that interviewed them shared that brought them on the ride along shared feedback. And it's so insightful because neither parties really know what you want to know. So if you give them this checklist or this sheet, they can simply answer the questions and give you the insight that you want without really making them work for it, or expecting them to know what you want to know. So you can be very specific. They don't have to be identical. It's just getting feedback, like what's really important and valuable that you need to know, and asking those questions.
Yes. Yeah. It's been insightful. I would never hire anybody without doing a working interview. And we're actually thinking about going to a 2-day working interview for certain positions just to see, if it's really going to be a good fit. But definitely that working interview has been a huge game changer for sure. Getting people to that working interview it's interesting because almost no one does it. So they're very skeptical of it at first. So I don't know what we might have to do a better job of explaining it. So we have upped that game a little bit. Yeah. So we give them, we explain it at the first interview. We explain it when we line it up, and then we send them a little packet before explaining what it is. So hopefully that will get more people to show up, because if you've never been exposed to a working interview, maybe that's why people just get confused and it sounds sketchy to some people. Like they're going to make me work for the day.
I've gotten that feedback. Like we recently hired an executive admin, and when she was telling people, oh, I have a working interview, they're like, oh, that's a scam. They're not really going to pay you.
Right.
That sounds strange. And so one of the ways that we explain it is, getting a new job is one of the most stressful things that you go through in life, next to moving, getting married, having children, losing a loved one. It's right up there in, that top list of the most stressful things in life changes. And so we do a working interview so you can experience what it's like to work with us, just as much as we're learning what it's like to work with you. So we're trying to create a win-win to know, is this the right fit? And is this something that you would really enjoy doing? Because it's just as important that you're excited about working with us as we are working with you.
Yeah.
And that's how we explain it.
And some people get it, and some people, if it works, it works. It's that 1/3 rule again.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now we hire them. And then after you hire them, the other thing is the onboarding process. And we don't have that here on the sheets, but having a really good, solid onboarding program is the key to keeping people. So they're going to decide whether to stay with your company in the next 2 weeks. You have 2 weeks. If you do a bad job of onboarding and treating them like a team player, that's how you lose them. So sometimes it's not their fault. It's our fault that they leave if we don't do a good job of onboarding them. So maybe that will be our next podcast topic, is how to do a really good job onboarding so people stay.
Core Growth Strategies provides business growth management solutions through cloud accounting, bookkeeping, and strategic business consulting programs. Our team works with small businesses in lawn care and landscape and trade industries throughout the U.S. We increase our clients' business acumen by creating business performance transparency through financials and strategic advisement based on industry best practices and benchmarks. Our experienced team provides support, guidance, and coaching, thereby allowing our clients to connect with viable data and discover their own solutions. Core Growth Strategies programs and services are designed to get your business from where it is now to where you have always dreamed it to be. Visit us today at coregrowthstrategies.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Don't miss our exclusive limited time podcast special. Just mention promo code GPA Pro to any member of our team during your complimentary consultation, or enter the promo code on our site when you sign up for one of our online programs. That's promo code GPA Pro.
Yeah, I think onboarding would be a really great thing to unpack. One of the things that I would say, though, is checking references, right? Make sure you take the time to check references from the new hire before you actually, I would say for the applicant, because even if it's like, 2 references that you check, but taking the time to get those references, because when you call their previous employer or who their reference is, and make sure if you're only checking 2, make sure that they're professional references. We always like a couple personal references and a couple professional references to call. We know that the personal references, they're going to typically be the biggest fans of the people that we're hiring. But those professional references, and they do really put up kind of like a guardrail of what they can and can't say, right? It's HR stuff. So, but if they can tell you, you can ask, would you hire this person back? And if they say no, that could be a red flag. So, and they can't tell you why, but they can say like, oh, yes, I'd love to work with this person again, or no, I wouldn't. So we always know when they say that they'd love to work with the person again, they always have so much more to say. But if they say that they wouldn't, then you know that there could be a problem. So that's another thing. Just make that time to check the references, because it could save you a lot of pain and headache.
Yes. The other thing that we check, so I will admit we don't check a lot of references because I don't trust the references all the time. It's because we've called up and half the time, whoever they give us for a reference, that their job doesn't work there anymore either. So we will check some of the references. But usually if it's a personal reference, we already know the people.
Yeah.
But we do run background checks. So I do pay for a service to all the employees, actually, even the field employees. And we run the highest level background check. So I want to know arrest, debt, all kinds of stuff the high level background check gives us. And we also run a social media background check. So we do a lot of research on, because they are going to be working at our customers' homes when, at these high-end homes alone. And we need to know that we can make sure that we're trusting people and they don't have criminal backgrounds, or they're not in debt, or they're not troublemakers, or they don't have a history of unusual behavior. So we do that background check. So we have speaking of the references, right? You call them up, and that was one of the most disappointing things, is how many people you call and they don't work there anymore. So definitely check references, but don't be surprised if you cannot get a hold of people. So
yeah, we call the companies. So we have to have someone at the company or a company's phone number, and then talk to, who do we speak to for a reference of this employee, and we've even got yes, they did work here from this time to this time. And, and when I say oh, would you hire them again? They say, I don't know, because I wasn't here during that time, which is fine. That does happen. But then you can ask, is the person that was their direct supervisor, can I speak to them? Do they still work there? So we'll kind of push the envelope.
Yeah.
But, it's, if that's not possible, then, we get what we get.
Yeah,
so
that's what I'm saying. Just get what you can get and move on, because sometimes it's not always there. But I recommend, especially if you're going to have anybody working in your office around any kind of money, do the background check. You might not have to background check all your lawn mowing crews and your guys. We do, because we do have people working alone at people's houses. But, definitely anybody in your office that works with money, I would run the highest level background check.
Yeah, we background check, we test. We use a specific test site that they'll have to, take an online test, right? And this is for higher level people, like managers or, things like that. And it will even tell us if they're cheating on the test while they're online, like if they're Googling things or looking away, from the screen if possible, or things like that. So that's been insightful as well, or if they stop the test and then come back to the test. But there's some great tests and background checks you can do out there to help you, get clarity if it is the right person.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting what you find on these background checks. People move around the country a lot. So they get in trouble and they move, they get in trouble and they move. So I got to tell this funny story. So I actually had someone that we background checked, and he was convicted of murder with a bow and arrow, and he did 20 years in prison. And then he got out and he was working for another landscaper, but it was another state. He got convicted. And when I was asking him what he likes to do in his spare time, he told me bow hunting. Interesting. I was like, oh man, all right, we're going to go there. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So he did not know I had done a really extensive background check. But that was very interesting. I was not expecting that answer.
Yeah. I mean, they do have to sign off on the background check. So you have to get their permission to do it. But they don't understand what type of information comes back when they do sign off on it, because it will tell them what's going to be checked, but they don't really read it.
No, they don't read it. No.
Yeah, they don't read it.
Nope, they don't read it.
Well,
yep. And we were almost ready to hire him, but actually, that's not why we didn't hire him. I think he got a job somewhere else before we even made him an offer. But that was very interesting. Yeah, I was like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
It makes you want to go bow hunting with the guy, right?
Yeah. I was like, wow, crazy. Okay, it's amazing stuff you hear when you're interviewing people. So next is about firing. which is kind of the least favorite thing of everybody's to do. And we're going to talk about why firing fast is so important.
Yeah. And it's like we got our hiring process dialed in. We have an extensive hiring process where we really take the time, which I think is one of the things that most business owners don't do, is really invest the time in, a longer hiring process. But then it got to the point where, I will fire quickly. And I even have team members, where they're like, hold on, Christine, just slow down. Because I'm like, what's happening? Like, why is this happening again? Or what's going on? And they're like, no, just wait a minute, because I've gotten so used to firing fast, because when I didn't, it, like, the damage that it did and the problems that it caused, I realized I'm not only increasing the mess I'm going to have to clean up, the problems that I'm going to have to go back and solve, but I'm prolonging the stress and just that, gut wrenching feeling that I have. I'm like, oh, I have the wrong person in my company. And so I'm like, just rip off the Band-Aid. Let's get rid of this person if they're not the right person. And I also learned it's a huge disservice to keep someone that isn't doing a good job in your company, because you could be releasing them to go do a great job in someone else's company, because it just may not be the right fit. So it's not just about getting rid of them. It's about, letting them have the opportunity to move on to something that's good for them.
Yes. It's so hard to fire people. For certain people, way harder than it should be. And we try to fix them. I've tried to fix people. This is before I was doing Clifton Strengths, before we were doing mindset, before we were really strategic as we are now. And it just never works. You can't fix people. That's why I love Clifton Strengths, because it doesn't fix people at all. It just gets them to lean into their strengths and show up with their strengths and talents. And sometimes that might mean leaving the company, inviting them to find another opportunity with another company. So I would say if you have a really difficult time firing someone, find someone who's on your team that can help, or find someone in your life that can help. Maybe it's a brother, sister, uncle, cousins, mom, your accountant, but, don't let someone in your company wreck your company. So the biggest thing, that you have to protect in your company is the brand, right? Anybody who's really destroying your brand has to go immediately. And even Warren Buffett said, you can lose money, but you can't lose reputation, because you can make more money. But when your reputation gets damaged, it's almost irreparably repairable, right? You cannot repair your brand. So always protect the brand. The brand is the most valuable part of the company. So you can't have people that are destroying your brand or your company culture. And, if you've worked 10, 20, 30, 40 years building up your company, and you have one employee that comes in and starts destroying your reputation, it's too valuable to let one person do that, who's been there for however long. It doesn't matter whether it's a month or 10 years.
Yeah. It also sends that message that bad behavior is tolerated, right? So when we have that brand and that culture, and we're not doing something about it, when somebody isn't following, the rules, following the company policies, or there's an exception being made for them, and then there's these other people in your company that are working really hard, it's saying your hard work isn't that important to me. I'm going to let this person slack off and get away with things, which tells them you're not protecting the people that are really showing up for you and working hard, but you're protecting the ones that aren't. So it creates a narrative, or allows space to be created for this narrative in the company, to where it's like, hey, bad behavior is acceptable because I'm just going to let it slide. And it starts corrupting the culture in the company. And it could also impact the clients where, Steve, you're talking about the brand where it says, yeah, that company will hire anyone and people can basically do what they want.
Yeah, it's not good. And right, if you have real bad behavior and it's pointed out to the owner or the management by the rest of the company and nothing is done, it sends a horrible message. And that's where you get turnover, actually. They're leaving because they don't want to be part of a company that doesn't take the responsibility, the immutable laws, the mission, purpose serious, and they'll leave. So getting rid of those, we've all been faced with it. I've been faced with it. Whoever's listening to this has been faced with it. I had a situation only a few years ago. I went away on vacation and one of my part-time employees decided to do something that was against the rules. And it was brought to me by one of my full-time employees. And I had to terminate that person immediately. And it was easy termination just based on the actions that the employee did. The employee was devastated by it, but the performance of the employee had been poor for months and months and months. And we had tried to coach the employee and re-educate and share expectations. So that was one part. So the poor performance is one track, but then when the employee does something that is obviously against company policy, like just so obvious that they are hiding it. And when they knew they got caught, they were, I don't know, just disappointed with their own actions, but they had to be terminated. But if I didn't do that, it would have sent a message to the entire company that I was not serious about our immutable laws and what we were doing here.
Yeah, so there's some things that you can really put into place to make that firing fast, easy, and accurate to where you're doing the right things. And, I always like to create processes in front of things to where, if I've experienced something, I'm like, oh, we got to do something about this, right? To make it easier. So those clear communication on, what are the non-negotiables when it comes to behavior in your company? Have some policies around the disciplinary actions of what's acceptable and what's not, right? Makes it real easy. It's black and white. It's on paper. They sign it during the onboarding process. Another thing is a job description. Make sure that they read their job description and have clear expectations of their performance, their responsibilities. Like, what are those? Because then if they're not doing that and hitting those, performance with their job, then this is not a good fit. And it's black and white. There it is. And then with the performance, we like through our onboarding process to really look at, and we do multiple check-ins, but a very basic one is like 30, 60, and 90 days, right? Where are they at? So knowing where should someone be, and then having that in writing, and then where is this person at? So that's something else that you can get in place, because then it's in writing and you don't have to bring emotion in it. You can just look at the facts. These are the company policies. These are, the non-negotiables. And this is the biggest thing. People kick the can down the road and they avoid conflict. This creates problems, right? So we want to address any issues as they come up right away. Not like, oh, he did this wrong. I'll mention it when we sit down in 30 days. Nope. Right away. Making sure that you put it out there, have the conversation. It doesn't have to be aggressive. It could just be, hey, I noticed that this happened. Per the company policy, this is what's supposed to happen. And then just let them talk after that, see what they say. They might say, understood, I'll get right on it. They might justify it. If they justify it, then that could be a red flag, right? So their response in correcting those bad actions are also an indicator of whether or not you've got the right person.
And having it all written out makes it be a policy issue and not a you issue, right? It's not the bad boss. It's like, oh yeah, that is how I am supposed to be on time, or this is the time I'm supposed to start. This is where I'm supposed to park. I am supposed to bring my own lunch and have my own drinks. This is the policy. I am supposed to show up in my uniform, etc. I am supposed to fill my paperwork out. So having that written out, it just helps people understand. And then you can just checklist. Are you doing these things? Or this is the expectation list, right? And that's the marker. The 30, 60, 90 days, put it on the calendar and just schedule it from day one. And that way they know when they're going to meet and you know where they're going to meet. Because I've found for us, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't happen. We'll get to it. And then it rains and then we got to work. So we're going to catch up and then it doesn't happen. Just put it on the calendar, whether it rains or not, and you're behind. Take the time, do the reviews. And it's really, are you meeting these expectations? It doesn't make them a bad person. So you have integrity and morality, right? Integrity is I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it. Morality is a different issue, right? That's if you're a good person, do you have these beliefs and are you following your beliefs? That's a whole nother issue. So we're not saying they're a bad person if they're not following the policies. We're just saying you agreed to this. Are you following this? And this is what the company is agreeing to deliver to customers, right? So if you're on time, we can be on time to the customers. That means we can pay you on time. Is being paid on time important to you? Right? Ask them.
Yeah.
If it is, being on time to work is important, right? Just, wrap it all together, because that's how we get paid. But schedule those 30, 90 days right up front, and do those, because that's part of the onboarding process is your 30, 90 days, 30, 60, 90 days. And that's where we miss as small business owners in developing consistency, developing longevity in our employees.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. Having it in writing, having it scheduled. It makes it very clear and it makes it very easy for both of you to be on the right page and know what's expected and what's needed and what's not being met. So,
and it's funny, but almost with your expectation page, you should have it at a 5th grade level. So almost a 5th grader that didn't even work at the company could come in and read it and everybody could understand it. Were you on time? Did you wear your uniform, right? It's just something, it's a yes or no. And it's you're not kind of on time or kind of did you follow the rules? It's a yes or no thing. And if they didn't, we just have to say yes or no. And how do we get to start wearing your uniform? Right? Start being on time. Is that something you want to do? What's your plan? And then you can keep moving forward. And that's why it's 30, 60, and 90 days. So they can keep making improvements over that time frame.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to move on to the next topic, which I think is really important. And Steve, I feel like we've talked about so much and we always say, you get what you pay for, right? So if you're going to hire somebody at $17 an hour, guess what? You're going to get $17 an hour work. If you're going to hire somebody at $25 an hour, you're going to get $25 an hour at work. So, you get what you pay for. It's in every industry. I don't care what industry you're in. If you want to pay somebody on the cheap, you're not going to get some amazing skill set, high level, high efficient, productive person. You're just not.
Hiring grown-ups and paying for a grown-up, and it doesn't matter the age. You can have younger people acting like grown-ups and older people acting immature and vice versa. But I mean grown-ups, responsible. They have work ethic. They have integrity. They do what they say they're going to do when they say they're going to do it. That's one of our immutable laws, right? Hiring people that are responsible, that don't break equipment all the time, that take care of your clients, your customers, your equipment. They're polite. Just hiring, you're going to pay for that, but you're going to get so much more. the production level out of a 17 versus a $25 an hour employee, you're going to get 100% more production out of the 25 than out of 17, usually. So being afraid to pay for the employee is actually costing you, because the lower paid employees, they have higher absenteeism, sometimes 300% higher. They break more equipment. They don't know how to talk to clients. It just goes on and on and on. You have to babysit them more. You have to go check out all their work. It's hard to grow a company as a babysitter. It's like you're a kindergartner teacher when you have cheap employees. And if you have really good employees, you have to pay them well, but you get more work. You can grow the company. You don't have to babysit. It's worth every dollar. I think this has been proven over and over again. And if you talk to any, high level executive and high level growth coach, they will tell you that, you get what you pay for in people.
Yeah. And you're going to be surprised when you pay that higher wage. A different person is going to show up for that interview process. So if you're like, oh, I put out an ad, we put the wage in there, these are the people that are showing up. Look at what you're offering as a wage, because the people that could be reading that employment ad may not be the people that you want, because it's $10 less than what they want. So they're not even going to spend time on you, give you the time of day. So you can put it in a range, but put it in a range that's going to attract the right person. And that's typically what I do. And we catch really good fish because of that, because we put it in a range and somebody shows up and we're like, yeah, they're at the higher range or kind of towards the higher range, but this is exactly what we need.
Yeah. And one of the things that's interesting, if you put it a lower rate and a higher rate, and then watch how they're showing up, like what's the car that they're driving. And if the lower rate, they're usually getting a ride from somebody else, or they're driving somebody else's car because they either can't afford a car or it's not a good situation. And the people who at the higher rate, they already have a decent car. So it's just, you'll see a whole different person. They dress differently, they speak differently, they behave differently. In Connecticut, the minimum wage is $16.50. And, most people are starting their laborers at $22 an hour, $23 an hour. In 1998, we were starting people at $12 and $13 an hour. So, you're going back a lot of years. 1998, half the people who are listening to this weren't even born yet. So, maybe half, I don't know. Some of you weren't born, but it's going back a lot of years. So, when you 20 something years later, it should be at least double that. Everything else is double, triple, quadruple that. So, don't be, if you're being cheap, you're just on who you're hiring, you're just really hurting yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then make sure you, of course, have, some sort of outline of a benefits package. If you're small, try to create something that's a benefits package. Maybe it's paid holidays, paid time off. That's where you can start. And then there's some things that you can do even as a small business that will attract people. There's things like dental and vision is fairly cheap for a company, right? So offer that. A simple IRA. So offer, to contribute to a simple IRA. Even a bonus plan, a little bonus plan is something that you can set up. So you don't have to have a non-existence benefit plan. There's some things that are very affordable for a small business where you can start building an attractive benefits plan.
So a couple things that getting paid regularly is a big benefit we found. Which sounds ridiculous, but a lot of people have worked for landscape and lawn care companies that have had a hard time paying them. So getting paid every week has been a big bonus for some people. They love that idea. We have found the uniforms we don't provide cleaning for the uniforms, but we provide uniforms for people so they're not wrecking their own clothes, but also so when they're at my clients' houses, my clients know who's in their yard because it says lawn science or American landscape all over the clothing. We also provide a boot allowance. So basically, if once their boots are like uncomfortable or just wrecked, we'll buy them new boots because, I worked in the field for over 20 years and cold, wet feet are the worst thing in the world, right? So we don't want that for the guys. If they can walk comfortably and work all day, I'm going to get way more production out of them. So I'm not going to pinch pennies and lose thousands of dollars because, people's feet are wet or uncomfortable. For $120, they can get a really nice pair of work boots that are going to last quite a long time. Maybe not the whole year, but the majority of the year. So we'll buy them boots. So there's like little things that we can do that just add to the comfort and value at work. And we're going to reap the benefits of that. And we have a simple IRA. We match 3%. It's not a ton of money. Again, there's a certain portion of the company that takes advantage of it and not everybody does. But it's attractive to the employees, and some of them who do take advantage of it, it's added a lot of value to their life because now they're going to have a retirement, and they didn't have that where they were before. So, you can meet with the financial planner. The financial planner meets with them, explains everything, and it's done right through our payroll system. So, outside of some paperwork up front, we really don't do too much. And then we have to make the deposits, but it's all done through the payroll system. So that's been a great benefit. But there are basic things like clothes, boots, water that you can offer as benefits.
All right. So before we tie up, I thought we could just touch on like what not to do. So you can understand, like, make sure you're not doing this. So one, we don't want to rush the hiring process, right? So we want to hire slow because when we hire quickly to fill those gaps, it's going to lead to those poor hires that we don't want. We don't want to just walk somebody through the company, have a conversation and be like, all right, well, when do you want to start, right? We want to be intentional. We want to start outlining, like, what does that look like? What are we going to ask them in the interview questions? And it doesn't have to be hard. If you don't know what to ask, go on Google and say, hey, I'm hiring for this position. What are some good interview questions I can ask, right? It doesn't have to be difficult. You just want to put the time and attention that it deserves to make sure you hire that right person. The other one is we just talked about that low pay. Don't lowball somebody, right? If you're hiring for a role, make sure that you're putting a pay rate out there that's going to attract the right qualified candidates, that are going to be motivated, that are going to fit your culture. So, do you hang out with people that make $17 an hour and, whatever they might be doing in their day-to-day life? So you want to make sure that you're not underpaying the people or putting a pay rate out there that's going to, attract the wrong people.
Ignoring culture fit is another mistake. Do they fit into our company culture? So if your company is a big sports loving culture, whether you're in Boston or you're in Chicago, and they're hunters and they don't fit in, or they are, from New York and they don't fit in with the Boston Red Sox, it could be a clash if it's not a friendly culture, or if they just don't fit in general. Sometimes you'll have, people that fit into my company typically come from this side of the state. We've had other people from other parts of the state or other parts of the country. And they don't get our sarcasm, our humor. They don't understand our accents. So it could be a little difficult for them to fit in. They'll get there eventually, but sometimes it can be a little stressful for them. Also, don't neglect training and onboarding. That's a huge thing. We're definitely going to do a podcast about onboarding. I think that's vitally important. And then avoiding performance issues. Don't keep toxic employees in the company. You can't fix them. You can't fix their attitude. You're not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. So if they are just trouble and everybody in the company can feel it and smell it and it just does not feel right, just give them an opportunity to work somewhere else.
Yeah. Don't avoid conflict or those tough conversations because you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this today. Right. So head on, have those conversations, let them know what's acceptable and what isn't acceptable. Like Steve said, if you don't have anything in place and you just need a simple process, have a checklist of what are they doing? What needs to happen? Like, are they wearing the uniform? Are they on time? Are they taking care of the equipment? What are that just short list of what are the things that they absolutely have to do? And then you can build more to it. So if you don't have anything, start small. And then that's even a great list to keep in place just as a main focus, even when you have all those things built out. It's just a great cheat sheet that makes it simple, but don't avoid it. Definitely, have those conversations, because I will tell you from experience, when you avoid those, or you're like, I don't have time for this, or I've had enough today, like no more, it's just going to make it worse. You're kicking the can down the road.
Yes. Trust us.
Yeah.
We've kicked cans and we have felt the pain of kicking the can. And then once the can is gone, you're like, why did I not do that a long time ago? Mm-hmm. Yep. Awesome. Well, hey, thank you for joining us on today's podcast. And we look forward to you joining us on the next one.
Thanks for listening to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast,
the show that digs into the challenges of growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit.